Hello and welcome to this special Christmas edition of Planted Unearthed. My name's Sam Peters and I'm one of the co-founders of Planted, the first contemporary design show aimed at reconnecting spaces with nature. Now, regular viewers of Planted Unearthed will know we've spent the last year exploring how design, sustainability, food production, architecture and nature can combine to create cleaner, healthier spaces. And one of the constant themes of our conversations has been waste, and most importantly, how we can reduce it on an industrial scale. Now, for many people, Christmas is a time of great happiness where giving physical presents, especially for parents, is not only traditional, but also culturally expected. With that expectation comes pressure to spend money on material things. The byproduct is inevitably an epic amount of waste. So when we were approached by a lady named Anya Hart Dyke, who runs a campaign called Big Dreams, Little Footprints, telling us all about her plans for a waste-free Christmas, we thought, why not invite her onto Planted Unearthed to tell us all about her wonderful initiative. And I'm delighted to welcome Anya onto today's programme. Anya, welcome to Planted Unearthed.
Thank you so much, Sam. It's good to be here.
Well, it's an absolute pleasure to have you on the show today, Anya. Obviously a Christmas special that hadn't been in the planning, but when you came to us about a week ago, you reached out via Twitter, very just called it. There a message popped up, and there you were. Sam, can you do this climb up a mountain or up a hill in order to raise awareness for what I'm doing? So why don't I leave it to you to just tell us, why did you reach out? Who are you reaching out to, and what are you doing?
Brilliant, thank you, Sam. Well, I have to say I commend you hugely on your response to my message out of the blue. I have approached quite a few people through social media who we've never met, and have been really surprised actually by the response, especially given that my ask was, can you climb a hill, please, and dress up, which isn't everybody's cup of tea, certainly not the dressing up part. But yeah, I've been in touch with quite a few people. We have nearly 100 people signed up, which is great, across the UK. We've got representation in Norway, Mallorca, Ireland, America. For a coordinated Christmas fancy dress hill climb this Sunday, 6th of December at 10 o'clock. And I think, given with the restrictions, my initial idea was to do one here in Fife where I live and just have a lot of people climb together, which visually would be quite exciting and fun. Obviously we can't do that, but actually a coordinated one is almost as powerful, if not more powerful, and obviously opens it up to everybody. So to know that people are doing this at 10 o'clock at the same time is quite fun. The idea is that you climb as small a bigger hill as you like. I have a mum friend with 4 kids under 7, and she's climbing a molehill, as she put it. So, so whatever suits little legs. At the top, you make a pledge as a family to either ask for or give one gift of time present in place of a physical present this year, one more than you normally would. Presents definitely allowed, absolute. Should too cruel not to have presents. Nothing wrong with that, as long as they. But once you made the pledge, then you take a selfie and then you send it to me if you're happy for me to publish it on my website. And we're going to have a big collage, all the selfies, to show just how many people want to celebrate Christmas with just that little bit less stuff. And buying fewer presents seems to be like the most difficult aspect of Christmas to change, especially when it comes to children. But I think, especially with younger children, mine are 6 and 3, so I've got a bit of a head start if you're a parent or a grandparent with older children and grandchildren. They're pretty adaptable, and this Christmas is the first Christmas my 6-year-old has actually asked for 5 specific things, which might sound a lot to people, but previously we've been given probably up to 20 presents per child. It's crazy. Given with lots of love. Would be the first to acknowledge that, and that's so important. But the first Christmas, we've got specific things on the list, and I think she'll be so happy about that. And this morning, 1st of December, she says to me, the best day of the year is Christmas because of the presents. And I'm like, that's fine, absolutely. You know, a child who doesn't get much in between birthdays and Christmas, of course for them, Christmas is about presents and other things, but that's perfectly fine. So yes, so organising a coordinated hill climb this Sunday, and I think next year, because sustainability, with all things sustainability, you need to think long term. Next year we'll organise it again. It's COP26 up here in Scotland, the climate summit. And next year we will ask everyone who's participated this year, Sam, you included, to ask 2 or 3 other people to join in and to make that your mission next year, as well as to do it yourself, and then kind of grow it in that way. And you know, next year, who knows what next November looks like. But at the moment, I think there's also been a lot of interest in the hill climb, because there's not a lot else to do, and there's a need to focus on something positive. So yeah, very excited about it, and so chuffed that you are doing it too this weekend.
Well, we're delighted to support this. You know, it's a really difficult conversation for lots of parents, isn't it? And it seems specifically like the burden does fall on the parents, because they're the ones who will largely be purchasing things. So, I mean, for parents out there who are kind of slightly overwhelmed by the sort of deluge of advertising that comes at you at Christmas, the sort of the pressure from your friends, pressure from your family, pressure from yourself often to just go and buy as much stuff as you can, often stuff that will never see the light of day again. What someone who sort of obviously thought long and hard about this, where do you start? How do you just get things moving on this? Where do the conversations begin?
You know, so the easiest place I found to start is with friends with children. So they might be your child's friends' parents, or they might be your own friends and their children. So when my friends and I all realized we were on the same page about how quite exhausting and how expensive it was getting every Christmas, exchanging presents with our children, it was such a relief. And there was no one fell out over it, obviously, because A, we're on the same page, but B, it was mutual. It very much like, let's just stop that. And that stopped 2 years ago, and that was a huge burden lifted. And then it was a case of, you know, loving grandparents and grandparents' friends and aunts, great aunts, and my own godparents wanting to give to my children, and my child's godparents. Then that was the sort of the next level to go to. But again, where people who are giving presents to my children, like their godparents, have children themselves, it's easy to say, why don't we not give each other presents again and do something together that's fun in the new year? And I think what's been great about the hill climb, so I started dressing up as a present 2 years ago, and
I was hoping you were going to come on as a present this time. I said that before. Very disappointed.
Not enough space. The box is really big. I do have my hat here just to demonstrate.
Well, we'll definitely see that.
Christmas is brilliant. I love it. I'm not anti-Christmas. Some of my best memories from childhood are Christmas related. Not all presents related, but yeah, Christmas is brilliant, and kids need presents, and this is by no means an attempt to sort of put more rules in for children who already have so many rules to dampen spirits by any stretch. But yeah, so 2 years ago I started dressing up, and every time, or the last 3 years, I've spoken to people about it. It's just opened up a conversation without having to be confrontational about it, or having to say, what do you think about presents? Don't you think there are just too many? It's just a sort of an easy way to talk about it. And with closer relatives in my life, I've just been able to say, oh, by the way, you know, Sunday, this is what I'm doing. Look at this picture. My daughter's coming too. We're going to have fun. What are you up to at the weekend? And you don't even need to have to say any more. And I think the message trickles through. But absolutely, relationships come before environmental issues, if you like. You know, if I'm not going to fall out with anybody because they're desperate to give physical things, especially this time of year with or rather because of this funny year. We've seen so little of relatives that if they want to double up the presents this year, I mean, so be it. That's what they need to do, and that definitely comes before challenging them on reducing the stuff. But I also put out a straw poll last December via Facebook through waste-free and plastic-free groups. It was primarily focused on parents, but it was just to get a sense of how people felt about the present issue. And a lot of parents got back feeling the way I do, which was brilliant. And I half suspected that, obviously, because of the kinds of groups I was focusing on. But I also got a few messages from grandparents and people my age without children saying how much they would love to be asked by a godchild or a friend's child or a grandchild to do something with them in the year ahead. You know, that would mean so much. And one lady, a granny, told me that she burst into tears when her 9-year-old grandson said, "I don't want to buy you a present this year, Granny. I'd love us to go out for coffee and cake in the new year." And she couldn't believe that her 9-year-old would rather do that, you know, than go out with his friends.
It's a commitment, isn't it? It's you're making a commitment to that person rather than saying, you know, here's something, I'll just dab my credit card down, or for a little person to say, you know, mummy and daddy bought this on my behalf. It's actually saying, I'm committing myself to you. And that's a really lovely thing to do, isn't it?
And I value your time as my lovely granny over anything that you can afford to give me. Absolutely.
Yeah. And I think that time, I mean, as you were just talking there, you've had me thinking, you know, what are my favorite memories of Christmas growing up? And, you know, it is obviously a time for kids, inevitably, and absolutely for older people as well. And I guess where the parents come is generally in the middle, or people in their sort of 30s, 40s, 50s, what have you. You're looking after both sides in a way. But I'm just thinking back to my childhood Christmas memories, and I don't think I'm exaggerating. I can remember getting a TIE fighter, which was a Star Wars figure, for those people of a certain age who remember Star Wars figures on this Planted Unearthed edition. But apart from that, I honestly can't remember any actual physical presents that I have, but I can remember amazing times sat around the table with my family, probably drinking far too much and watching the cricket with my brother into the night, you know, but also just the time and long walks in Richmond Park. We were lucky enough to live near the park in London, and just it's very much the time with relatives that I remember. And obviously this year of all years, that's going to be particularly precious, isn't it? And we all ask everyone to be really respectful of particularly older people when they meet up this Christmas. But, you know, I think this idea of pledging your time next year, when all being well, things will be easier, we will be able to socialize more and see our friends and family. It's just such a lovely idea. I mean, perhaps sort of broadening out a little bit, we talked about the climate conference that was going to be held in Scotland next year, but why is it important that we reduce waste? Why is this conversation even happening? Like, who cares if we have loads of plastic and just have it for a while and then chuck it out? What's the big deal?
What's the big deal? Right. So obviously it's not just about the stuff that comes into the house. I mean, as a campaigner, I'm focused on parents with young kids and the stuff that young kids bring into the house, the things that come into the house because of them. So much of that they outgrow very quickly. There's a huge industry, like multi-billion-dollar industry, multi-million-pound industry, that's focused on marketing stuff to young kids, because there's a weakness in families and all the extended family and loving family and friends for buying things for young children. And I think it's probably a lot to do with my first grandchild, my first niece, my first godchild, and just wanting to, in the absence of the child saying, oh, I don't want that, actually, I just want to do this. I want to go out and have fun. I want to ice skate. You know, all the things you can't do with a very young child, you compensate and give them lots of stuff. So they get an inordinate amount of stuff, and a lot of this stuff ends up in the bin, because a lot of toys break easily, they're badly made, and they can't be given to charity. So a lot of charity shops won't accept a lot of children's toys. So a lot of stuff ends in the bin, which I don't need to explain why that's a problem. But it's also the climate impact of manufacturing all these things and shipping these things and packaging these things. And these things come generally, we've been mapping it. We've got what I've called a TAT map, which is, you know, a big map of China, essentially, because a lot of these toys come from China. And every time something comes into the house through a magazine or a party bag, or just a present lovingly given, which isn't very well made and falls apart, or the cracker presents, they're all made in China. So that's a long way to be shipped. So there's an emissions problem with the stuff we buy as well. So the idea with the time is obviously to substitute all these things with the footprint, with doing something fun together. And my website has a whole list of things you can do for nothing. This isn't just about buying expensive experience presents. wildly exciting, but as they are, they're mostly for older children anyway. For the sort of under 6s, under 8s, that's probably what my website focuses mostly on. These are all free activities. And you might think, oh, picnic in the woods. Well, I'm sure mummy and daddy do that with their kids every weekend. I'm a granny, I'm the auntie. I'm sure that'll be boring to them. Parents don't do that kind of stuff every weekend because other things get in the way. And from the parents' point of view, when I tell my 6-year-old, let's go for a picnic in the woods in January, I don't tell her it's a gift of time Christmas present, but you know, let's do so. That becomes really special, even from a parent, because even if you do go sometimes, if it's less than once a month, it gets forgotten about in a young child's memory. So don't underestimate how excited a child will be when you offer to do something as simple as some, you know, messy play, or creating something, making something out of paper mache, or just going on an iPad and learning about space and the planets. You know, children love to be listened to, love to be told stories and to be talked to as sort of mini adults, if you like. You know, they love learning, and you know, beloved aunties and godparents and grandparents and parents, you know, they crave their attention more than anything. Young children value that above, okay, a couple of key toys like My Little Ponies or Star Wars, you know, whatever their favorite thing is. Beyond that, they want to spend time with you, and they want to have fun, they want to do stuff together. So yeah, there's a big environmental impact and of the stuff we buy. And then if you can get the young child to understand a little bit around the environmental impact, I was talking to my 6-year-old again this morning about it, just saying, you know, I said to her, why do you think buying too many things is a problem? And she said, well, you know, if it's plastic, it'll go in the bin. And I said, well, what's the problem with that? And she's sort of forgotten. I had to remind her that if it gets buried in the ground, the worms can't eat it. The worms go, you know, there's an age-related way of explaining this. You don't have to jump into climate change with a 6-year-old. I don't. And then you talk about the emissions associated with the shipping and the manufacture of things, and you just say, oh, the stinky air. And we all know, every child will know the smell from the cars. That's horrible. And then you just say, can you imagine how much a factory would produce of that smell? And who wants to breathe that in? People live near factories. People live near landfills where all this stuff is rotting. People live near incinerators where stuff is burnt. People have to breathe this in it. So make it about people and the smelly air, ideally.
Yeah.
And climate change comes later when she's a bit older. But yeah, it's trying to get them into this habit of expecting less at Christmas and thinking beyond the presents. They can think about presents, but think about other things to do with Christmas as well. We have a 12 days of thankfulness as well in the countdown to Christmas, as well as opening our chocolate-free advent calendar every day. We think about what we can do that gives thanks to people in the community, our friends, and just being helpful, basically, and thinking of others. And then in the future, they turn into little adults with their own wage packets to spend, who, as a mum I spoke to yesterday put it, have this muscle memory where their default isn't just to spend unthinkingly. They might think twice about what they're buying, who they're buying from, how often they're buying, and maybe swapping with friends, sharing, getting secondhand. All those things need to be muscle memories for these children coming into adulthood, because it's taking me forever to remember to do all this. You know, to come at it as an adult, you're up against it, breaking old habits.
I think there's a couple of words in there that you really touched on that really kind of resonate. One is community, and the other one is thinking about how you spend your money. And I think, you know, again, they come down to time. I think time, which is obviously the thing that you're proposing for people to give. And it's just, you hear it so often, I just don't have the time. I don't have the time to do this, or I don't have the time to do that. Or we've all done it where we rush to the shops, which we're probably not going to be able to do this year anyway, and just grab the first thing off the shelf and think, oh, that'll do. And it's all essentially around prioritizing your own time and just making yourself have time, because you can always take those choices. And I guess that's easier for some people than others, of course, but wherever you can find that time, just give it to the people that you care about, and give it to the people that love and that you love, and Christmas will be better as a result. I guess that's part of what you're saying as well. It's not just, this is by so far and away not about ruining Christmas. It's actually about improving Christmas and going, well, that bit about just the consumption is just such a small part of it, really. It's become far too big, I suppose. And I mean, everyone who's watching this, I would, I mean, Anya, if you could remind us your website address, which is just a wonderfully, just such an accessible, but also beautifully presented and designed website. If people do want to look at more about what you're doing, Anya, could you tell us your website address?
Yeah, Big Dreams Little Footprints, all one word, bigdreamslittlefootprints.org. And you've got the gift of time activity ideas on there, and you've got a whole raft of activities that you can do to teach kids in a fun way about how to reduce our environmental impacts as well.
And lots on there just about, as we said before we started recording, just about the one thing that people can do, just as in, you know, just this idea that is so, it feels so all consuming, and so, you know, what can I do? What difference can I make? But there's some information on there, and you've got some thoughts on that as well.
Yeah, absolutely. It's overwhelming as a grown-up who reads the news or who watches the 6 o'clock news. You know, you know what's going on, even if you don't know the details of it and the extent of it. I think that's why I like the idea of working together as a family around reducing the family's environmental impacts, because there's so much you can learn from a child who doesn't have, you know, isn't burdened with the knowledge of all the problems, and has the imagination to think, well, why don't we try to do things differently, is very optimistic. And that's probably why there's a lot of eco-anxiety and eco-distress, as they call it, in teens, because it suddenly kind of hits them when they're more exposed to what's going on. But if you get a young child now to sort of empower them to feel like they can make a difference by taking one of these activities on the website, you know, pick what your child's interested in. They might like baking, they might like imaginative play, they might like being outside. And then in every activity I've got on there, there's a sort of embedded, very, very simple message about why the activity is important to do and why it's better than the alternative of usually buying something shop bought. So why don't you make it yourself, or whatever it is. And just do one thing at a time. Just start somewhere. You've got to start somewhere, and then see where it takes you. And there's no pressure. And if it doesn't work, you know, lots of the things I have on my website, my 6-year-old's not interested in, so we don't do it. And it's partly because of her age, and it's partly because she's just not interested in covering herself in mud in the garden. She wants to be a clothes designer. So we talk about what different clothes are made from, and, you know, tapping into your child's interests in an age appropriate way. Start there, start with one thing, and see what happens. It's you'll have a lot more fun than you think. Plus, it's an activity, isn't it? We're all looking for things to occupy our children with at the weekends and after school. And that's that whole cliche of aligning your values, your actions with your values. It feels really good, even just this, if you just pick the one thing, the one place to start. And that will probably be enough, that feeling, if you realize the importance of doing it, you understand why. You know, that's part of your motivation. You need to understand why this is so important. Then you'll probably be more likely to go on to do the next thing. And because you're explaining to your child the environmental message behind the activity, they'll be probably over time more inclined to want to do it, because they'll also understand that they're aligning their actions with their values. You know, I think give children credit for understanding a lot more than you think. I say that to myself all the time, because I'm no child expert, no child psychologist, but yeah, there's a lot to learn as a family. You can feed off each other and just start somewhere, see where it takes you. It's good fun.
And I think it's a great message, isn't it? Just start somewhere, and just one step can be the kind of catalyst to change in the whole area of life. And I remember just probably 15 years ago, I started to actually consider how many plastic bags that I was using and going, if I went shopping or whatever. And then once you start thinking about that, and that becomes as you said, a sort of muscle memory to take your own reusable bag with you shopping, then you start thinking, well, what else could I do? And then you start to sort of, the dominoes start falling, I guess, a little bit.
You chase the next thrill, because you don't get the same thrill from taking your reusable bags to shopping.
Exactly.
The next buzz.
What's the next buzz? Exactly that. And I think what we love particularly at Planted about what you're doing, Anya, especially this Sunday, and just a reminder that everyone watching this should be going up and climbing a hill and making a commitment to give the gift of time this Christmas on Sunday, is that there's lots of people doing it together. And it's not, you know, there is that eco-anxiety that people talk about. And, you know, we've touched on it in this program now, where people just feel this sense of helplessness, and that can be quite overwhelming. But there are so many people out there, so many people like yourself, but who really care about this issue and really are trying to think about ways to change, to improve the planet, to improve the way they consume and improve the way they interact with people as well, and respect the planet. And so we've got huge respect for what you're doing, Anya. I'm absolutely delighted you were audacious enough to just to contact me outright, and hopefully that'll encourage you to keep cold calling people. But it's a great concept, a great initiative, and we wish you all the very best of luck with it on Sunday. We'll certainly be supporting you all the way.
Thank you.
So that just leaves it for me to say that if you've enjoyed this edition of Planted Unearthed, then I'd like to, if you've enjoyed this edition of Planted Unearthed, please subscribe to our YouTube channel, details of which can be found on our website, www.planted-cities.co.uk. On there, you'll find more great content, upcoming Christmas specials, and details of Planted's plans for 2021, which include an exciting new pop-up event in June, more details of which will be available soon. That just leaves it for me to say thanks again to Anya from Big Dreams, Little Footprints. Thanks to you for watching. My name's Sam Peters, and I'll be seeing you up a hill this Sunday.